Okay, so welcome everyone to our 7th session of Obliquity, Product versus Process. We're here with Dr. Savita Rani, and she is a third-year resident in Public Health and Preventative Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan, and also the current Vice President of the Canadian Association for Health Humanities. She has a special interest in incorporating experiences from the arts, humanities, and the outdoors into medical education to use as tools for teaching, learning, and reflection. So we're really excited to have her here tonight, and I will hand it over to her.
All right, thank you so much, Manisha, for the very kind introduction. Hope everybody can hear me all right. Okay, so hi, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me tonight in this workshop. I'd like to start out with a brief land acknowledgement. So I currently live, learn, and play on Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis, presently called Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And I know you are all in other places, so please take a moment to acknowledge the history of the land that you are currently on. Alrighty. Okay, so my hope is that this is going to be a rather informal space to discuss and chat. And we'll be doing a couple of drawing exercises too at the end, which I hope will be fun for you guys. So just to get things going, here is the agenda. So what you can see on the screen for the evening, pretty short. It's not meant to be a formal lecture or presentation. I'd like it to be as interactive as possible. And I had passed along some reflection prompts to Manisha that you may or may not have had a chance to look at. So I'm just curious, just to get a lay of the land, maybe you can either give a thumbs up or a type in the chat. Did anyone have a chance to take a look at the prompts? And totally fine if not. Just to get a sense. I figure either way, it might be nice to kind of, when the time comes, have a chance to go through the prompts / the reading. And we can kind of do a bit of a roundtable. You speak, you don't have to speak if you don't want to, but I certainly encourage you to do so. Okay, so to start things off, and I can stop sharing this part because it's probably nicer to see at least two faces here. So to start things off, I'll talk a bit about why I decided on the topic of product versus process for this workshop and how it ties into my personal journey through medicine. So as I've reflected on my educational journey so far, from undergrad to medical school and now residency, I've become more and more aware that most steps in my journey thus far have focused on meeting pretty arbitrary societal metrics of success, at least in the North American context. These metrics overwhelmingly tend to focus on a product. So that's a final grade, a degree, a so-called prestigious profession, an award, and on and on. And this focus on product is something I'd say I've had for probably the majority of my life, and perhaps you have too. And it's not something we could have really escaped from, given it's an essential part of the societal milieu here and has been reinforced by our communities, our families, and the education system itself. And this focus on product, call it a meritocracy or materialism, to me, it's one pillar among some other familiar ones, like coloniality, heteropatriarchy, classism, racism, sexism, etc., that hold up the structures of current North American society, including the cultures of medicine and healthcare. And being able to attain certain metrics requires a great deal of privilege that not everyone is afforded, like getting into medical school as one example. It also systematically shuts out those in society who have other ways of thinking, learning, doing that don't fit with the status quo. And it's interesting that on the one hand, there appears to be a correct way to succeed in North American life. But on the other hand, people do seem to have an innate sense that this actually is not the case. I have certainly reflected on this more and more as I've continued in my residency, and particularly as I've found the health humanities community, which has been a real source of richness and safety and growth for me. And so I'm interested in seeing what happens when we shift our focus away from product in that broad sense and more towards process. So the acts of doing, being, experiencing, reflecting. And it can be rather difficult to enact this on a global scale in your personal life, given that we are, actively swimming in a meritocratic soup. We still have jobs to get and residencies to match to and so on. That stuff doesn't quite go away. So instead, I want to try a smaller scale approach to this. And drawing is a rather low barrier, low stakes way to have that switch to focus a bit more on the process. And so I'm also interested in looking at how drawing can be used as a way to kind of reignite the skills, the attitudes, and the states of mind that have been kind of systematically taught out of us in our pursuit of product. And we're going to be drawing comics specifically, and comics defined very loosely is just any combination of text or image. But that will be more towards the end. So before getting into that, now I'm going to bring up so I'm hoping and wondering if we can have a bit of a group discussion on this, kind of we can go through some of the prompts, or we don't even have to go through prompts if anybody has any thoughts or ideas or anything that comes to mind after my initial spiel. But otherwise, the prompts are kind of here, so you can take a moment to read. We can do one at a time or whatever you guys prefer. I'll open the floor briefly if anybody has any initial kind of thoughts, or if not, can go ahead and kind of read the first prompt, and then we can maybe get a discussion going. So I'll give a moment to kind of read that first prompt there.
Hi, everyone. This is Nasli. This is not like an academic example, but I guess a personal one that comes to mind is I'm just thinking about my wedding, which was now 2 or 3 years ago, and how I was like, I really wanted to make sure it was perfect and like Pinterest all the way, and like make sure those photos like had all the right poses, and it just led to me being and my husband actually incredibly stressed through the whole day, and in retrospect a bit envious of people who just did like, I don't know, eloped or something that was a bit like quite a bit less stressful. So I think in that instance I was definitely a bit too focused on having that product that I had in my mind. So that was the first thing that came to mind after I read that.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I resonate. I just got married too. My husband is on the call here. And I definitely had a Pinterest collection of boards. So I really resonate with that. Anyone else? I think Silas raised his hand. Go for it.
Hi, my name is Silas. I think about this actually only too often from a professional perspective. I'm an ICU nurse, and if I don't focus more on the product rather than the process, then things frankly just don't get done. And obviously, there's very harsh consequences if those things don't get successfully achieved. But it would be nice to think about the process too, and think about ways to improve things. But yeah, really, day-to-day at work, absolutely. Product is more about it, more what's it about than process.
And do you wish there were any space to have a chance to think or focus on kind of the process of the things you're doing in that environment, in the acute care?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that would be wonderful. I mean, currently COVID just kind of makes all of that absolutely unrealistic. But yeah, it would be absolutely nice to think about the process, to have the time to be able to do that. Yeah.
I can play a little bit of devil's advocate in a way. Um, I've been writing my personal letters to apply for residency, and I feel that I've actually been stuck in the process rather than the final product of creating something that would make me a good candidate for residency. My artistic background is writing, and so I've been very focused on trying to create a piece that is both satisfies the writer in me, but also satisfies the requirements of this personal letter. And so it's been difficult to remain authentic and true in the stories that I'm sharing or in the examples that I'm using for my letters, in an effort to kind of reach this final product that is required for me to submit my application.
Yeah, that's the ever present that tension between needing to produce something in order to get to where you want, where with perhaps wanting to think about what it is you're actually doing. I also saw that someone you joined the chat. So just to let you know, hi Stephen. You can take a look at the prompts on the screen shared and feel free to share any thoughts you have based on what you're reading there. And I see Sarah. Go ahead. Honestly, you guys do not have to raise your hand. Like I think it, free for all, I think should be okay. So go for it.
Yeah, well, hi there. I kind of wanted to expand on the similar kind of idea, how you can have this weird sort of backwards reading of this product versus process thing. Because I think about, like, I've started to do a bit of drawing and art since my life calmed down in residency. And I talk with one of my friends online who wants to do illustration and go to school and everything. And he's always talking about all these like technique and how you have to like have your sketchbook set up in this particular way so that, you know, you can see your progress over time. And I feel like we sometimes get into disagreements about, okay, like all the details of the process. But to me, like the product is having your sketchbook filled and getting drawings done and doing things. And I think if you're always watching videos on like how you should be doing things and thinking about how you should be doing things, it's not as productive as just like getting it done. I have it's a similar thing like when we're talking about academic writing too. Like if you're so tied up in the details of how do I do this perfectly, like your case report isn't going to get written. So it's funny, you can kind of read it backwards, because I think through some people's lenses they would be like, oh, you're worried so much about the product, and that's
Absolutely. And I'm pretty conscious of how I think the way I phrase the product versus process is kind of being antagonistic or one being better than the other. But that was kind of intentional just to see, because there are different people who, well, there's different circumstances where one might be necessary over another. Neither is good or bad, but more just kind of observations of what kind of the overarching focus in our kind of society and in the medical culture for sure. But yeah, definitely those things still need to get done. So the product is important. And same with like in the ICU or any kind of acute setting or surgery. Yeah, you kind of need to make sure that that end product happens. Absolutely. Any other thoughts or things to share?
Yeah, I can share. You listed sports there, which is great. It really triggered me thinking about, I played really competitive sports growing up. And I just remember this one year, like at the first practice after tryouts, the coach was like, okay, we're already practicing for nationals. And just like everything was geared towards this one this one endpoint, this one game. And yeah, I had a really tough time in sports, like just kind of socially. I had a lot of trouble and felt quite lonely, and every day, like every practice, every dryland training, like everything was just torture. And so it was really interesting. I didn't think about it like I just pushed through because I guess the product was so tantalizing, being really fit and doing really well at this sport and winning this championship. And but it was interesting. In university, I did undergrad in creative writing as my minor, and in those courses it was so good to just explore my history with sports, and it was in exploring those through writing that I was like, oh wow, there was a lot going on here that was separate from that goal of the championship and that process. There was a lot to mine from there. So yeah, thanks for listing that. Made me think about that.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm actually curious. It's one of those things where you mentioned that end goal was very tantalizing, and something that I often stop to think about is, what is it that makes that end goal or that product tantalizing for us? I mean, I can think of it with my pursuit of medicine. Kind of that goal was very appealing, but kind of reflecting on why exactly is that. And yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I can make a comment. I think the way my coach presented all the challenges that we did in spin class and on the ice and just in every context, it was always, the harder you work now, the more likely you are to win. And so if the thought was, if I win at the end, that will mean that I'm a hard worker. That will mean that I did my best. That will mean that I'm a good person because I was committed and worked hard. And that was sort of my definition of like what was good. And so I think it was just this desire to feel validated by this end result.
Right. So kind of that sense of external validation in kind of meeting the.
Totally.
I think I would say something quite similar for kind of a lot of the things that I did, for instance, to get into medicine. And that's something maybe not nice to think about, or something you don't necessarily like to admit, but certainly is a big part of it. Was a big part of it to get here, and I'm kind of slowly unthinking that aspect of things. How to perhaps get that validation internally.
Yeah, it's terribly ironic that it's the process that showed that you're hardworking. It has nothing to do with the product. The product could be anything, but it's the fact that you did all the practice that shows that you're hardworking, not whether you win or whether you get into med school or not.
That's a really interesting point. I really agree with that, and it's interesting that even if the process is what is reflective of those things you want to that validate you, that's not what we value societally. And kind of how did that come about, right? I mean, this is all rhetorical thinking, I'd say, but that's a really interesting point. I'm also looking at the chat, so I do see Rosemary had a comment in there. Sorry, Manisha, did you want to?
Yeah, sure, I can read it out. Rosemary was just saying that I think of healthcare as involving a diverse array of practitioners, and a process of collaboration among them can lead to a superior product.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. And that's again kind of the process being a really critical, I guess, that collaborative nature, right? That we like to think about in healthcare, and then trying to figure out, in that case, then product is still important. Good patient health outcomes. So it's just kind of finding the balance between the two, I suppose. So Yeah, any other comments on the first prompt? I mean, we don't have to go through every prompt just because I am mindful of the time, but if you wanted to look at the second or third prompt, um, I can give a few moments to do that. And then the thumbs up. When you're sharing the screen, it's like hard to see the chat and people.
Yeah, actually, I recently read a study where the authors were actually implementing an art-based HIV and STI prevention program among Indigenous youth. And I thought it was the coolest thing. I mean, they were engaging with Indigenous elders and implementing art-based strategies for prevention of STIs. And it, on this, isolated article, it was very, very effective. So I was like, oh, that's super, super cool. I mean, I'm not a very good artist myself. I can't do art to save my life, but it's cool that it could be used in, ulterior ways than I would have initially thought.
Perhaps would like to reflect on your sentiment that you can't draw to save your life. That is a very interesting phrase you used. Do you mind talking a little bit about why you feel that way or how that came up?
I don't really know, actually. That's a good question. Someone's definitely asked me that in the past, interestingly enough, but currently I can't think of a really good reason. I don't know. I just my art skills, my motor skills aren't up to par, I guess. I really don't know.
I'm just gonna probe just one more there, just because it gets to a point that we'll see in kind of the reading excerpts that I'm going to show shortly. But do you think any of that sentiment stems from childhood experiences?
I don't think so. I mean, I did actually a fair bit of arts when I was a kid, but more crafts, really, nothing specifically with drawing. I don't know. It was just never a modality that I really gravitated towards.
I was just reflecting on this year for Halloween. I got like a Halloween gingerbread house, and I tried to make it with my toddler, and I was trying to go off what it looked like on the package. So I was trying really hard to make it pretty and stuff, and it just went horribly, and it was like meltdown central, and it did not go well. So I think last week I got not gingerbread house but little gingerbread men cookies, like do it yourself, and I just tried to like wing it. I just gave her this stuff and I was like, go for it, not hoping it ends up any sort of way, and they look terrible, but it was a really fun experience for both of us, and much less stressful than the first time. So I think in general that's something that I've learned works out a bit better, maybe especially with kids, is just to try to enjoy the experience rather than trying to make it anything perfect or yeah. So that's what came to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an interesting thing. What is it about those creative experiences that kids enjoy? The making and doing, or the kind of end result, and how does that end up switching?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, she definitely seemed to be really into the making and doing part of it. So, and perhaps less pressure to make it perfect. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's the piece that I find very interesting. What is it that changes our idea of what to focus on? And Manisha, I see that your hand is up.
Yeah, that just made me think about in terms of art making. I think I used to draw a lot more when I was younger. I also wrote when I was younger as well, but then I kind of siloed into writing. And I think that's because in my family, I always remember both my parents and my brother, they're the type of people that can like look at something and then draw it and it'll look like what the thing they were looking at was. Whereas me, if I want to draw something, it's like it's almost scientific because I have to like focus so hard to make it look like whatever it is, and it's not fun anymore. It's just like you're trying so hard to create that duplication of whatever you're looking at or that representation on the piece of paper. And I find that with writing, I don't have that same expectation of myself. Like I could write something that's quote unquote bad, but I wouldn't see it as bad because it would be sort of like the process that I'm going through to get to where I want to go. But I don't have that same outlook with drawing.
That's so interesting. I wonder, because in that example, you were really, it was in comparison to the other people in your family that kind of triggered that difference for you. And I kind of wonder if it was just you or not with your family, would you have gravitated away from that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe I just secretly wanted to be the rebel child.
Maybe secret, maybe not so secret.
Yes. So Rosemary said it's important to know the goals of the participants in terms of health and of including patients in the deliberations. One may value quality of life, another focused on how long they might live.
That's an interesting point, with the quality of life versus length of life, and who the definition of what is a good quality of life. That really differs on the person. Absolutely. I mean, that opens up a whole other topic. Oh, Manisha, is your hand still up, or is that a new hand up?
Oh, that's probably an old one. I'll take it down.
Okay. Any thoughts on that? That's all. I always find that to be interesting. Kind of what is it that people value in life that means quality of life to them versus other people.
Well, I was thinking of those gingerbread and whether they looked cute or just blobby and lots of icing, and that's what the child wanted, lots of color, I was just comparing that to when a healthcare team is dealing with a patient, especially one towards the end of their life, and what do they want? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's a very relevant conversation in palliative and generally healthcare circles, but certainly I think palliative does, our palliative colleagues do a very nice job in kind of finessing the nuances of how does one determine quality of life for that patient, for that family. Any other thoughts?
Back to the cookies, I think children, very young children, naturally feel very creative. And so whether it is the process that they're enjoying of the decorating or making of the cookie, or just the fact that they think it all looks beautiful, like they think the product is equally as beautiful as a Van Gogh, until they learn through, I think, comparison over the years in school, that this person got a better mark than I did. I know personally that's how it was for me. I could see that others' art looked different and that the eyes of the art teacher lit up more than looking at my particular work. But I never, or I often felt that mine was equally as good and didn't quite understand the lesser mark.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then that point of kind of the innate, I guess, creative nature in children is, we're going to get to that a little bit. Phyllis, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
This has been really awesome, and thanks for the invite. And what it keeps coming up for me is I have this realization now that a lot of my life is about being productive, and that sort of process or art is, if it's not about being productive, then it has to take a back seat. So yeah, thank you for this realization.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I found myself feeling that way for all of med school for sure. And it just came to a point where it was like, for me, it couldn't continue any longer. But there's a really nice line from Mary Oliver. What did she say? From her book of essays, Upstream. Something about if you, I'm really paraphrasing here, but something along the lines of those who are most kind of remorseful are those who had a creative fire within them, but kind of let it slide, secondary to other responsibilities, other things, other priorities in life. So something that does stay in mind, even though I don't remember the exact phrasing. Yeah, it is an interesting thing. But what I'm gonna do is we'll kind of go to number 4 here with the reading, just because it touches on or piggybacks onto that, the children and their creativity and kind of that topic that that's been brought up here. So I'm gonna just share a different screen that shows kind of the excerpts. Let's see. So what I'm going to show now is excerpts from this wonderful book by this wonderful person named Linda Berry. Can you guys see the kind of comic looking readings? Yeah, okay. So Linda Berry, she is a cartoonist, an actually accidental professor. That's how she talks about herself. She teaches a comics class at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And so the reading the excerpt that I'm sharing here is from this book called Making Comics that she has, which is essentially like a crash course in her class. And it's not as straightforward as you might think. It's not just you making comics. It's really a meditation on this process, really, the creativity and how it's innate in children and somehow gets stomped out of us. So I'll leave, there's 10 pages that I kind of selected, but I'll leave it on this one first. And there's quite a bit on it, but if you have any thoughts about kind of anything come to mind when you're reading this page, I'll give you a moment to take a look at it further, and then the page below it kind of also touches on some of the things that we're talking about. So I'll just give it a few moments here and give me a thumbs up once you're kind of done taking in the page. Okay, so we have a few folks who've kind of read through this. Any thoughts from the, I was gonna say peanut gallery, but I don't know if is that a good thing to say? I don't know. From the crowd, from the crew.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I turned my video on and didn't take my mute off. What I really noticed right away for me is just the comfort in the format, really, which draws me in because I'm not a drawer. But because of the way that I see her drawing and expressing it, I go, hey, I could do this maybe. I want to read more.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad that you said that, because I think that's a big part of her work, is that accessibility. Anyone can do this. And something I think I found really poignant for me was where she wrote in that, you know, her characters were said to be ugly and crude and faux naive, whatever that means. And, you know, she acknowledges that her work was met with derision by everybody else, even though I personally find it so charming and amazing. But it's interesting. I wonder why. Any thoughts on kind of that type of reaction?
I find it really easy to read. The actual font is You know, there's a book out there called Font Matters, and this was just really easy on the eyes.
And that's interesting because that's actually, I done a similar sort of workshop before with another group of people, and somebody actually said it was really difficult for them to do this reading versus a typical, 20-page peer-reviewed article, because that was familiar and this was unfamiliar to them. Whereas I'm with you in the sense that this was pretty easy for me, but it depends on the person, which is interesting. Any other thoughts?
I love that she says, comics saved me so many times, that she found something that saved her. Yeah.
Absolutely. That sense of, sometimes comics as a medium can be seen as, well, juvenile or childish, but this kind of puts that on its head. It was a very critical, life-giving type of thing for her. So I just want to go to the page below it, because this gets to a lot of what the group was talking about before. So I'll give a moment to kind of look at this. And I'm seeing Naslie's comment as well.
Oh yeah, I didn't have much that I've reflected on it yet, but I just thought it was interesting and kind of speaks to some of the themes about discounting feelings in childhood and stuff. So
It's funny though, because I think, sorry, I know I'm talking at the same time as allowing people to read this, but if you forgive me, I'll just comment on this part. The kid, I think the way that she actually wrote it though was less about putting them, the way I read it, because I think you can interpret it any way, but the way I interpreted it, she's actually curious. What did they know about whatever they drew on that page? Kind of this curiosity.
that's probably true. I probably just took it in the more I don't know what's the word, cynical way of just being critical of people, but
that's a good point though, because that might be kind of the immediate what one might immediately kind of jump to. What is it? What do they know? They're a kid. That's a very typical rhetoric that we might hear. Anyway, same deal. Give me a thumbs up when you're kind of done looking through that page.
I think it's wonderful that she's referring to a kid just being a kid and drawing for the sake of drawing, and then later after learning the rules and subscribing to societal restrictions and language restrictions and all of these restrictions, they kind of lose the ability to just draw freely.
Mm-hmm. And the interesting part is how and why does that happen? And actually, she has her own thoughts in kind of the rest of the book that I won't go through today, but if it piques your interest, check out the book. I can give you the citation. But absolutely, I think it's interesting that it's that kind of second paragraph there, when those creative capacities are absent in young children, adults worry about them, what's going on. But kind of, I think Phyllis said when she mentioned her thought on, just keep doing things and, not having time to or being able to do things that aren't seen as productive. What happened? When did that switch take place? Any other thoughts? Oh, I see a chat, something in a chat. Rosemary, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I thought my son had a great ability to draw, and he was very young. And that time that he drew this thing, I don't know, it was a dog or something, and he immediately scrumped it all up. I was so upset that he had judged it not okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And how was your child? Was he young at the time, or?
Yeah, he was fairly young. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of, what is it about, what is it that made, this is rhetorical, but just, what is it that made him think that this was something not worth keeping, or at least recycling? Did it have to be crumpled up and destroyed, in some way?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Any other thoughts on kind of this?
One thing that this reminds me of is how people say that maybe we should be thinking about humans making art as just like something that humans do, the way that like birds sing or pigs root around in the mud, or it is just a human activity instead of something that, only a select few have the right to do, or you have to be good at it to be allowed to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of this critical function, an innate function of, maybe a defining function of being human versus another creature. That's definitely an interesting point. So I'm not going to go through all the pages just because we don't have time tonight, but I figured I'll just skim through just to show you what the pages kind of look like, and the type of thoughts that run through this. And it really resonates with I think I really resonated with her book, and her thoughts and narrative. So just do a quick run through. Like, some of these things are just, they're just so, I don't know, poignant to me. And it's really, it's much beyond being good or bad at drawing. It kind of and this, it's interesting. So Rosemary, the point that you said with your son crumpling up that art, it's actually, this page really speaks to that, actually, where Linda has, so people can be very cruel to their own drawings. So one of the best places to send a new drawing is into somebody else's hands. It gives it the kind of living chance it needs to survive its creator's doubt. I find that a very kind of an interesting point.
That's great.
Mm. And then this kind of reminds me of what Silas was saying. It reminds me of the horror some people experience when they draw their first pictures as adults. That, you can't save somebody's life you can't draw to save somebody's life. And I think that's like, it kind of speaks to that pretty well. This is the last kind of page of the excerpt. I always find this, so the original has a chance, giving your expression a chance to live and to survive, as a very kind of tender type of thought. So that is the excerpt. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And now we can draw. So I hope, well, sorry, before that, any comments or thoughts about kind of the rest of that, like real quick through of the excerpts?
I guess one thing that it made me think about was, especially in the realm of medicine and kind of trying to merge the humanities and medicine, I feel like sometimes there's this need to mobilize the arts for a specific purpose, and that the arts can't just be the arts for their own right. And I guess I'm obsessed with my personal statements right now because that's my entire life, but I'm struggling, especially writing them right now, because I feel like my strengths in writing or in my art practices, I have to write about them in a way that proves their worth and that proves that they can be useful for other means, and that I'm not just a poet or I'm not just a writer, because that, when we're adults, for some reason is not enough. There has to be something else. So I just think that that's interesting, and that we really need to hone in on art for art, and that it doesn't need to be mobilized in all these other ways to be important or valued or good.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of echoes what Sarah had said, that it might just be one of our defining features and functions as humans. Absolutely. Okay. So anybody else have any other comments on that before we go to the quick drawing exercises? I swear it's not going to take an hour, don't worry.
I'm sorry that you're experiencing that, Manisha. That's unfortunate that you have to validate that.
Thanks, Silas.
All right. Well, does everybody have a writing utensil and a piece of paper? And if not, it's okay. But if you do, that's more fun. And if you are willing, you can have your videos on for this. You don't have to, but it is encouraged. Okay. So everyone, if you can give me a thumbs up when you are good to go. Okay, awesome. All right. Okay, so we're going to start with our piece of paper vertical. All right. I'm going to start with the instructions. So just follow my lead. So keep your page portrait there. So draw a large border around the page. I'm doing this in real time too, alongside you, so you can see what I'm talking about. So draw a border like that, just around the page. Just a big rectangle. Just to give yourself a space, to carve out a space on this blank ocean of a page. Then about a quarter of the way down from the top of the page, you're gonna draw a line kind of inside that box that basically divides it into two pieces here. You got a small top rectangle and then a larger square on the bottom. Okay. So now in that top rectangle, I want you to write the following sentence. The giraffe smiled broadly. So it kind of looks like that. And also I realized I was going to talk about why we're doing comics today in relation to everything else. But I'll do that right now as you're just writing the sentence. So like I said before, the whole, process product comparison, the comics is kind of a useful way of, I think, approaching it, because as an art form and as a product, comics are, a lot less rigid in their form than, other types of art. Say, realist painting or something. They're kind of approachable for self-diagnosed non-artists. That's what I'm going to call. They're approachable to dabble in, and so that's why we're kind of delving into it today. And there is a whole other discipline kind of within medicine called graphic medicine, which is the use of comics in healthcare. Yeah, Stephanie, you're giving a thumbs up. If anybody's interested in graphic medicine, want to chat, connect, want some references and readings, let me know. I'm here for that. I love graphic medicine. Anyway, everybody has their sentence and their squares. As you can see, it is like a big one-panel comic so far. Okay, so now I want you to close your eyes. And in that big empty space, I want you to draw a giraffe smiling. And keep your eyes closed. And keep drawing the whole time. And I'm going to time you for 2.5 minutes. So ready, set, go. And if you finish drawing the giraffe, draw some scenery around it. Just keep drawing. Don't take your pen or marker off the page until I say we're done. We'll give you a countdown at 20 seconds and at 10 seconds. And we're done. All right. That's the alarm. So Now, how did that feel? So how did it feel to draw with your eyes closed?
Yeah, it did feel liberating because all no rules and all that. Okay, where exactly should I place the eye and where exactly should I do this? Like I just kept putting down parts of the giraffe. And all of that formality was gone.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't see what's going on. Well, I actually use that. I have pretty poor eyesight, so when I have my glasses off, yeah, I'm pretty blind, and that can be a liberating feeling sometimes because I just can't see what's happening. And how do you feel looking at your, well, anyone else want to kind of talk about how it felt to draw with your eyes closed? Sarah, I need to try drawing without glasses. Yeah, for me, that'd be the same thing like drawing without my eyes, like with my eyes closed, without my eyes. That would be hard.
I was kind of surprised at how well parts of it turned out. it was like, wow, that does look like a hind quarter of a giraffe.
Well, exactly. I when I looked at all your drawings, I was like, you can tell these are giraffes. You really can. And they were just so charming, And how do you guys feel looking at your drawings right now?
It made me smile. It made me happy. It was funny.
What do you want to do with your drawing now?
I shall put it on the fridge.
That's a good place. That is a good place.
That's what I was going to say. I'm going to put it where I would put one of my child's drawings, on the fridge.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, that's nice that you didn't want to, crumple it up. Aw, Rosemary, but she's gonna do that.
Mine doesn't even have, I mean, it's got a mouth, and anyway. Yeah.
Nasli, you're.
I was just gonna say, similar to the other sentiments, I just felt like it was like having my eyes closed took a bit of the pressure off, because I knew it wasn't going to be perfect. So I was like, well, might as well just enjoy the process. And yeah, it was, I think, a lot more enjoyable. And yeah, I think like I felt like I knew I was going to smile and laugh when I looked at it, just because I knew it was going to be interesting.
That's kind of nice that you already had the sense that you were going to smile and enjoy it. So that's wonderful. How did it feel showing others your drawing?
I'm glad I drew it with my eyes closed.
Yeah.
I think what it tells me is I'm more bound to the product than I thought I was.
Yeah, that's an interesting recognition. I can't speak. Recognition when you don't, think about it a lot. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, any other kind of thoughts about that one? Seems like people enjoyed it. I remember the first time I kind of did that exercise. It was liberating. It was just nice to see what happened, really. Don't know what it's gonna look like. We'll see how it goes. It was, yeah, I think it was fun for me, but I know that for others that I was doing it with, it was not in like an art related class. It was actually not so fun for a lot of other people. So it's interesting.
Just going back to the idea of like whether you keep drawings or not, I had actually kind of a heated discussion with my friend about it, the friend who's going to go to art school, and he was very insistent that I had to keep all of my drawings and I had to draw directly in my sketchbook and not send my drawings afterwards and just keep the ones that I like, because he's like, oh, if you get rid of all the ones then you can't track your progress properly. You're like hiding your bad drawings from yourself. And I'm like, I'm doing this for fun. Like maybe for you, you have to focus on like getting things perfect and everything, but like I would not choose drawing as a hobby if it meant I had to keep thousands and thousands and thousands of sheets of drawings forever. It's just interesting how different approaches can work differently for different people. So actually I have a really stupid system where I do all my drawings on printer paper. So if I don't feel constrained to having to stare at the failed drawing forever, I just throw it away, and then I keep the drawings that make me happy to look at, which might actually not be the technically nice drawings. It might be drawings where it's like, oh, I had this idea, it didn't work, but I like this idea and I want to keep it for later. So I guess it kind of depends on your personality and like what stage you are. Because I know when I very first started drawing, the temptation to scribble all over the drawing I didn't like was, I used to do that all the time, and I've sort of grown beyond it. So I think different things work well for different people depending on their life stage and how their learning style is and how their art style is.
It's also interesting the point you make, because it's very clear that it's not necessarily just the discipline that is, you know, innately process driven or product driven, because, you know, we can think, you know, a creative discipline, like I guess going to art school, for instance, you might think that there is more of an emphasis on what that product is, but it sounds like actually not quite so much. There's actually more of an emphasis on what that the product is showing, like keeping all of your drawings, the like researching the different techniques so that you have a perfect drawing at the end, or whatever. And it's actually kind of not too dissimilar to the way that, you know, people in medicine might approach like, you know, learning any sort of procedure or something of that sort, any sort of technique. So it's kind of interesting that it's not necessarily discipline dependent, and just kind of what how that work is situated in your life, whether it's your profession or vocation or not. So that's an interesting point there. Any other thoughts before we do the second and last drawing exercise? Okay, seems like not. Alrighty, so does everybody have a second piece of paper? Okay, I see a couple thumbs up. Alrighty, yay. So split your paper in half. So it's, I guess, horizontal. You can see I did draw on it before, but so on the right hand half, write two headings, one that says did and one that says wondered. So it ends up looking like that. Did, wondered. That's on the right hand side of the paper. And then on the left hand side, basically do a mini version of what we did on the first page. So draw a big rectangle border and then a line kind of a quarter down from the top so that you end up looking like this on the left hand side. Okay, now back to the right hand half. So write one thing that you did today. Can be exciting, can be mundane. And then one thing you've wondered about recently. Mundane, exciting, doesn't matter. So I'll give you a moment to do that. So next, in the small top rectangle, write a single sentence story combining that thing that you did with the thing that you wondered. Kind of like the last one. Short sentence that combines the thing that you did with the thing that you wondered. So it's like a short little story. And thumbs up when you're done. I see 2 thumbs up. All right. So then you have kind of the top part of your next one panel comic. You have a little story there. Okay. So it seems like most people are done that. Okay. So now on the left-hand half on this bottom part, that empty square, just, you know, close your eyes or not close your eyes, just make like a random scribble mark. So my scribble ended up looking like this. Just a random scribble. All right. So now for the next, I'm going to say 3 minutes, I want you to use that scribble as the starting point for drawing your own doodle character or scene that describes that story that you wrote, that one sentence that you wrote on the top. And even if you're done drawing your scene before the time's up, just keep drawing the whole time, you know, add scenery. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, go. I'll give you a heads up with 20 seconds and 10 seconds. All right, timer's done. Sorry, I guess I got too engrossed and forgot to give you the 10-second, 20-second countdown. Okay, so everyone want to show your drawing to the screen and then maybe share the story that you ended up writing? I can go first. While I made toast, I wondered why Saskatchewan is so cold. And that's like my kitchen, and there's toast, and I'm a blob. And if you want to share your story, you can unmute.
I made leek soup, and I wonder if I will get that library book.
Nice. And
So, will soup provide enough energy to walk to the library?
oh yeah, that's
and
a
my scribble has me walking there.
Well,
And there's the book.
that's great. That's wonderful. Yay. Soup is good. Soup is always good. And who wants to go next? I see Sarah.
Sure, let me unmute. So I've already forgotten what I wrote. Oh yeah, I did a practice oral exam for my rural college today. They make us do them twice a year. And then I was wondering, oh, where am I going to end up working later? And then so my thought was, okay, when I'm working later, am I still going to have dreams about having to do oral exams or having to do my rural college oral exam? And so here's me dreaming about like sweating and having the examiners interrogate me under this is supposed to be one of those swinging like police lights.
Yeah, things not to look forward to. Yeah, I'm just putting the Royal College stuff a little further back. Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm loving the doodle comics. All right. And Nasli, go for it.
Okay, mine was during my meeting, I wondered where to buy M&M cookies. So here I am at my meeting on my laptop, and I turned my scribble into steam coming from a big tray of M&M cookies.
Nice. And I know which you're speaking of, so
yes,
I just outed you, so we had a long meeting today, so yes, that's a good thing to think about.
very long. Yeah.
All right.
I can go.
Yeah, go for it.
So my two were, I asked a room of strangers if any of them were named Pat today. That was fun. And I wondered what the best drive-through food was in Westlock. So my combo was, I asked a room full of Pats if any of them had drive-through food. And then I have this funny gang of Pats.
That's wonderful. That's a nice heart-shaped doodle.
Yeah, and then they all have a pet name tag, and then the one has the drive-through for me.
Hilarious. Oh, that's great. Yay. Oh, that's so good. I'm so happy. All those comics looks, isn't that amazing? You guys came up with such cool and great stories and wonderful comics. Yay. So how did that feel? Say in comparison to the first one. How did that feel for people?
That was fun. I feel like being able to see helped me with my drawing.
Yeah, surprising how that works, you know? Manisha, I think I saw you in mute there.
Yeah. I don't know if this was the purpose, but I really felt the process in this one. It was nice, like it felt like we were constantly building, and then it was almost like this gathering process of gathering ideas until we got to the place that we had created to put it all together, rather than, and I found this with the first activity too, when we drew the border, it was almost like the page wasn't as scary because we had a border. We had created a space where we were going to go inside and create. And yeah, I also really love how it's like a little tiny book now.
Yeah, and that's honestly, that is a little maybe Easter egg. I love, for instance, I make little zines, like they're just my thing. Like this is my study zine for emergency management. So yes, it is like a little booklet, a little mini comic for you to keep or recycle. And how did it feel to kind of have to, well, to make a scribble and then have to transform that into something that was not necessarily a scribble?
It was liberating.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful.
I'll show mine. I went to the grocery store and I wondered why some people didn't want to wear masks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know whether you can see it or not.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But my scribble turned into a person with pizza hands. And then my romaine lettuce put on a mask, and then my celery turned into a cat. It was good. It was fun.
Yay! That's your ideal grocery buddies, right? Your cat, celery, and pizza hands. Pizza hands are probably convenient. You can just snack on the go, you know. And do you think, like, have that, like Manisha, you said that it kind of was a bit of a build up, or you had a bit more of that process and thinking and putting things together. Do you think you could have or would have continued drawing that story or even the first story? I mean, they're one sentence, but they're the start of a narrative.
Yeah, no, I think so, for sure. As in art class, we used to have this exact activity where at the beginning, the art teacher would come and she'd do a squiggle, and then your activity before you could start your actual project was to do this, where you'd have to create something out of the squiggle. And I could never see anything in the lines. And it was always the most stressful one for me because I was like, someone's going to make a ballerina out of this, or like a bird. And all I see is an S. Like it's an S and it can't be anything else. So I made it similarly to Rosemary's, like it was a pathway. And so I think that helped me. I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to try and make my squiggle anything. It's just, it's going to be a line. And so I think that helped. But no, it was great food for thought to start at least. And then I think you feel more comfortable building upon it afterwards.
Oh, I hear that. I hear that. Any other thoughts or things anyone wanted to share about? I mean, that's kind of the last activity. But anything else just on the activities, on the topic?
We used to do with our kids, somebody would start and then you pass the paper over and the next person had to draw. And so then why couldn't they see where I was going with that? And then let it go. So it was fun. So that, yeah, maybe something like Manisha, you know, stressful of what it is or isn't.
That's so funny. That's almost it's like a drawing telephone chain. Like there's that telephone game that you whisper, but a drawing styles. It's actually like there's actually a game, the Telestration. Silas, you know this. It's it's kind of like that, isn't it? You
It's
basically
exactly like that, yeah.
yeah. So hey, it's been patented and is selling for money. This exact game. So Rosemary, unfortunately,
Where did I miss out?
you took your idea. I don't know.
I found that I was not focused on the product in the first exercise because I couldn't see. I was just doing the process. Whereas this second time, I was stressed about the process because I wasn't enjoying how the product was looking. I just couldn't see the end result. Kind of speaking to Manisha, like, how do I make this line into something? Which for me, it became the steam from a pot of soup that I made today. But yeah, just drawing the laughing part was, yeah, it was stressful. Neat exercise though.
Yeah, that's interesting though, how similar, I mean, similar activities, similar type of actions that you're doing really evoked different feelings for you. And interesting to think about why is that, you know, what is it about each of them? And I mean, you already kind of spoke to that, but it's interesting to think about.
I just wanted to share, since we were talking about drawing games, the other day my husband and I were like, we should try, you know how you can do one-word stories? We should try doing like a one-line drawing and see, and not tell each other what we're trying to draw and see what ends up coming from it. So I was just trying to find it, but I was trying really desperately to draw a cow and he was trying to draw a shark. And we just like took turns drawing one line, and I just love how it turned out, the like shark cow. Anyway, yeah.
Is you literally, you do one line at a time and like
Yeah,
that's amazing.
We took turns and we tried to use each other's thing, but then at a certain point we gave up and finished our own.
That's great.
Oh, it was so fun.
I'm definitely stealing that idea now. That's
do it.
You could print that. You could print it.
Yeah, that would be a really quirky like card, you know?
That could be our Christmas card for the relatives.
Or even on fabric.
Yeah, you could
multiples. Yeah, it'd be very cool.
Your shark cow.
You could punch holes and then have it like card drawing. What was that called? You sew with wool into all the holes.
Well, that's, yeah.
Oh my goodness, I love all these ideas.
Needle points.
You can call it a sow. A sow?
I was trying to figure out what was the right combination. Kawark? That doesn't work. Shcow? Show? Yeah. We'll have to work on that one. A for effort all around though. Alrighty, guys. Well, it is okay. Everyone's kind of in different places, but in Saskatchewan it is 8:30, so I am mindful of the time. Thank you so much for, you know, participating and being a really wonderful group. And I hope that this was fun, maybe useful, and at least opened you to think about the topic and, you know, the possibilities of not just drawing, but just humanities and just creativity. And this is just a very narrow form, you know. Creativity can come in many forms: sports, music, food, etc. This is just a small slice, but thank you for joining. And I'm done for the night. So any parting words from, I don't know, Manisha or anybody?
Can anybody say what their one takeaway is going to be, or an insight or something?
Good idea, Rosemary.
Me finding, oh, I am kind of wedded to the process. I mean, to the product. I need to stop that. I want to stop that.
This is great. And I thanks for inviting me, Savita. I'm really glad I got to be a part of it. I think I'm going to be embracing my creative side even more and not being as I don't know, insecure, I guess is the word, or focused on what I can't do. So yeah, it was great.
Thanks, Nasli. Thank you for coming.
I think I would, I'm planning on being more creative too, and just those creative ventures that I have put on the back burner, I'm going to move to the front burner and spend time doing them. So thank you.
Well,
Thanks
that's
for the thanks for the inspiration.
Oh, well, my pleasure. I draw inspiration from the great Linda Berry and many others.
I thoroughly enjoyed this as well. I look forward to connecting with you and you know, maybe getting the opportunity to come to the next one as well.
Ha ha ha. That is my husband. So yes, he will be.
Am I the last one? Sorry, I'm holding up the group.
Go for it.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the chance to kind of get out of my own head, and I felt like I really enjoyed the activities. I think it was nice to restructure how you approach art making, and that sometimes when you do that restructuring, that's when you feel more inspiration or more freedom to explore. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. Honestly, this wouldn't have been possible if you weren't as, engaging and excited and participating. So I thank you all for coming, and thank you, Rosemary, for staying. I see in the chat there. I'm really glad that you stuck around, even though you had to draw. So thank you. Alrighty. Well, there's no other lessons learned or parting words. I will bid you all a very good night, and thanks again, and hopefully see others at another Obliquity workshop.
Yes, we will be taking a break over Christmas, and then we'll be back in January. So we will see everyone. Check our website for the updated dates and times, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one.